G'day, Cavalier here. I'd like to give you a rundown of the user interface and how you play a Napoleonic war game called LesGrogUI. I'm playing the French. The French army is made up of the units you can see on the map, and this is the two-dimensional map that you can play the game from. You can't see the enemy forces at the moment due to a fog of war. Each of the units represent a infantry, artillery or cavalry regiment, and they are grouped into corps, and each corps has a corps commander which is represented by a small square with a French flag in it. This is what they look like on the two-dimensional map. However, you can go to the three-dimensional map, and here we've got an infantry regiment made of 2 battalions, an artillery regiment made up of 3 batteries, and a cavalry regiment made up of 4 squadrons. Back to the 2D map. What I want to do is basically show you how to play. You play from the Commander-in-Chief's perspective most of the time, which is the large square flag, French flag in the middle of the army here. Normally you give commands to your individual corps commanders and they command their subordinate units. You rarely give commands directly to units. However, there are a number of instances where you may do so. One instance may be to send cavalry out to form a reconnaissance screen, and another may be to actually adopt a specific defensive position in a town, hamlet or redoubt. So let's send out some scouting cavalry. We'll pick the cavalry unit up the north, basically click on the unit to give it an order, we pick scout area, and then we draw out to where we want that unit to go and click, and it'll go and do that. Down in the south we'll click on another unit, we'll get it to march to an area, and basically we'll get it to move to that town on top of the hill in front of it. Now we'll go down to giving some of our corps orders, and effectively this works the same. You click on the corps commander, it takes time for the message to make it from the Commander-in-Chief to that corps commander based upon distance, and then it'll take the corps commander time to enact those orders based upon his competence, the size of his corps, the level of fatigue, the number of casualties and the present disruption of his corps. So again, we'll select the Northern Corps here, we'll click on him, which brings up a number of options. I want him to do a diversionary attack directly forward, and you draw it out to where you want him to move to, and then click and drag to determine the frontage you wish his corps to maintain. Release, and then you've got a number of choices. You can set his reserve, the organisation, we'll keep him in 2 lines. We'll put him in a formation of mixed, which is a mixture of column and line, and we'll get him to execute that immediately. We send the order, and the corps commander will do that when he receives his orders. Down the south, we'll select another unit. What we want it to do is advance to the top of that hill and establish a defensive line. So again, we set the frontage. We again execute this one immediately, and the organisation we'll do is checkerboard, and the formation we want to put them in is line. Okay, we have a corps down in the southwestern corner which is full of green units. I'll do something slightly complex with this. I'll click on it, I'll get it to do a tactical march to the east, which will take it about an hour and a half for the orders to get there and for it to execute that move. But then what I'll also do is I will give it a second order to deploy in line 750 metres, but rather than do that immediately, I will execute that in an hour and a half. So it should do the first order, and then an hour and a half after it receives the orders, it will do the second order, which will be a complete change in formation and action. Now we have 3 corps in the centre, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the red corps as the main corps, and it will attack, and I will set up the other 2 corps to provide support to it. So selecting the red, deploy in line, which is the aggressive advance, set my frontage, formation is column, and rather than do it immediately, I'll set this one at a time, and I'll commence this action at 10:45, the time being 10:30. So that's set. Now the corps behind it, I will link up to provide support to it. This command will happen immediately, however, the corps will actually combine its actions with the red corps that it's supporting. Now the core to the right, just below the red core, again I will link it up so it's providing support, and it will basically move on the right of the main core. So the red core is the primary core and it has two cores supporting it. We can now check to see what our orders look like, and on the map it shows what the orders are, when they'll receive them, and how they'll actually enact them. So let's hit the play button and get things going. Now you'll note that most of the cores have started to move except for the three cores in the centre and the cores in the rear that I haven't given orders to. The cores in the centre haven't moved because they won't start taking actions until the time that they've been ordered to move, which is 10:45. So let's skip ahead. You'll notice enemy units on the right of the board have started to appear as they've been spotted by my units, and hence I become aware of them. You'll note my cavalry unit up the north that I sent off in a scouting mission has passed a redoubt, a defensive feature, which is vacant, and I will now give an order to a unit to march to that point and defend it. The time is 10:20, and you'll notice the cores in the middle have not started moving. Now we'll just quickly check what's happening in the three-dimensional world so we can see what the troops are actually doing. We'll get rid of the orders. And as you can see, we've got my northern corps are advancing up the hill towards that fort. Moving over, the centre is still standing still because they haven't received their orders to move yet. But down on the southern flank, my units have adopted a defensive position in that town as I ordered, and the rest of the corps is adopting a defensive position on the hill, again as ordered. The time is now 10:45, and you'll notice that the corps in the centre have started to move. The two blue corps to the rear and to the right of the red corps are now forming up on the red corps because they will move and support that unit. So I can change the orders to the red corps, and the two corps that are supporting it will move according to the orders there. So that's basically it. You can see that the Russians in the north have adopted defensive positions my troops approach, and we can see more Swedes in the centre. I won't show you the remainder of the battle. This has just been a brief introduction to show you how the user interface works and how you command units. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting and informative. Goodbye.